The disappearance we're going to talk about today started with a scenario that plays out every day in the real world. A couple have a fight and one of them leaves to cool off. However, in this case, more than 36 years later, her family is still waiting for her to return. Let's talk about Elizabeth Campbell. Elizabeth Ann Campbell was born on May 31st, 1967, to Tom and Samsoon Campbell. She was the youngest of 5 children and grew up in a very close-knit family who resided in Lampasas, Texas. Elizabeth was said to have led a quiet, sheltered life and was very close with her mother. She was a month shy of her 21st birthday and was attending Central Texas College in nearby Kylene, Texas, along with her boyfriend, Ricky Ray. She had plans to attend Texas A&M in the fall to study marine biology. Then on April 25, 1989, what started out to be just an ordinary Monday for Elizabeth would end in a horrible way that no one could have ever imagined. Elizabeth was working a shift at a 7-Eleven convenience store in Rancier Avenue in Kylene, Texas. Her boyfriend, Ricky Ray, came that night to pick her up after her shift ended. The couple had planned on studying together for some upcoming tests at college. There was an argument concerning some things related to Elizabeth's job, as well as Ricky wanted to study English that night, and Elizabeth wanted to study trigonometry. The argument apparently got heated enough that Elizabeth wanted to leave Ricky's house, so she phoned her mother for a ride. Ricky was heard by Elizabeth's family in the background, promising that he would give her a ride home so her mother didn't make the drive. Elizabeth then walks out of Ricky's house, thinking he would soon join her and drive her home. However, when Ricky never came outside, angrily, Elizabeth started to walk home on her own. Unfortunately, her house was 30 miles away. Exactly what happened next is unclear. Elizabeth had left Ricky's house in Kylene and then gone from there to near Central Texas College in Kylene. Police believe that Elizabeth probably got a ride to travel that distance in that amount of time, but no one has ever came forward to confirm that. There is a somewhat confusing sighting of a woman resembling Elizabeth with long black hair walking eastbound on Highway 190 that night. The reason I say it is confusing is that if it was Elizabeth, this person was seen walking towards Kylene, and the authorities and family believe she would have been walking away from Kylene and towards her home in Lampasas. The next sighting of Elizabeth that seems to be confirmed was when a fellow student of Central Texas College said he witnessed her walking down a service road near the college. He was working late at the computer lab that night and saw her on his way home. He said he didn't personally know Elizabeth, but recognized her from college. He stated he gave Elizabeth a ride to a 7-Eleven at Highway 190 and Martin Luther King Boulevard in Copper's Cove, about 17 miles from her house. Witnesses did report seeing a green gremlin drop her off. She then went inside to use the phone to call Ricky to ask him to give her a ride. This was approximately 45 minutes after Elizabeth angrily left and 11 miles away from Ricky's house. Elizabeth said she was scared. The couple argued again about her leaving, and during the fight, Ricky refused to pick her up, so she hung up. She told him she was going to call her family to come get her. She knew that would be a long-distance call, so she used the payphone outside the 7-Eleven to try to reach them. Around midnight, Elizabeth's mother said the phone did ring. She had turned the phone off in the bedroom, so by the time she got to the other phone in the house, it had stopped ringing. Presumably, judging by the time and the situation, the missed call was thought to be from Elizabeth. What happens next is the biggest unknown of this case. No one ever sees or hears from Elizabeth again after she is sighted at the phone booth outside the 7-Eleven, except one witness who claims to have seen her leave the convenience store and get in a maroon car with the landau roof between 11 p.m. and 12 a.m. Although there is never another confirmed sighting of Elizabeth, many people over the next several months will report they have seen her in a variety of locations and situations. The family didn't realize that Elizabeth was gone until the following morning. The family rule was that the last person home would turn off the porch light. When her brother Tom Campbell arrived home that night, he just assumed that Elizabeth forgot and turned the light off. The next morning, Sam soon asked her small grandchild to wake Elizabeth up, but she told her she wasn't in her room. When the family realized Elizabeth wasn't home, they phoned her boyfriend Ricky. He didn't know where she was exactly, but thought she had probably gone to her sister's apartment at the Central Texas College housing complex. When she wasn't there, her family tried to report her missing with the police right away. They were told they could not because it had only been 12 hours. The family was reportedly told conflicting things by the police, such as they had to wait 24, 48, or 72 hours to report her as a missing person, depending on who they talked to. The family felt the police were not as proactive as they could be, and some didn't even think Elizabeth was missing at all, but was an adult who chose to leave. The family then sprang into action on their own. They did everything to try to track their loved one down. They initially hired a PI, but it was getting to be expensive, and they felt they could do just as good of a job. Elizabeth's father, Tom Campbell, took a 3-month leave of absence from his job at Galveston Tugboat to help in the search. Over the years, they would sell property, cattle, houses, stocks, land, jewelry, and anything they had of any value to help fund the search for their beloved daughter. The family distributed flyers, made countless phone calls, traveled anywhere there was thought to be a sighting, and even went to some very seedy and dangerous locations. Elizabeth's mother, Sam Soon, refused to sleep in a bed for the first 6 weeks after her daughter went missing, because if her daughter was suffering, she would be too. There was even a bizarre phone call made to a worker at the Lampasas hospital the week after she went missing, asking if the ambulance carrying Elizabeth's body had arrived at the hospital yet. Elizabeth Campbell's disappearance was featured on America's Most Wanted in 1988. It was also featured on Unsolved Mysteries in 1989, reportedly after Elizabeth's father hounded the television show until they agreed to do a segment. After the segment aired in November of 1989, there were 200 phone calls of possible sightings. I will describe 3 of the unconfirmed sightings of Elizabeth shortly after she disappeared. The people that saw her were interviewed on the Unsolved Mysteries segment. Just a few days after Elizabeth disappeared, there was a possible sighting in Waco, Texas, 85 miles from where she disappeared. Roger Anion was working at a gas station and said the woman was with a rough-looking Asian man who held the female by the wrist and spoke in a foreign language. The woman kept looking down and would not make eye contact. The second sighting was 2 weeks after the disappearance, just 2 miles from where she vanished. Michelle Christensen, the clerk at the convenience store, said a woman resembling Elizabeth was with an angry-looking Asian man who was holding her by the wrist. It appeared the woman was not allowed to talk. The third sighting by Virgie Johnson was 2 months after Elizabeth vanished. It was in Garland, Texas, 150 miles from where she went missing. The lady bumped into a woman as they were entering a convenience store. The woman appeared to be nervous and hurried to get back to the car with the man inside. She is convinced the woman she encountered was Elizabeth. The police didn't really put too much confidence into these sightings. They did say, however, that at the time there was an underworld pipeline that supplies Asian prostitutes from Kylene to Dallas and Houston. Elizabeth was attractive and was half Korean, so she could have been a target, but there was no actual evidence to support it. Then in May of 1992, there was a possible development in the case that gave Elizabeth's family renewed hope, briefly. 4 years after her disappearance, her purse was discovered in the Crockett County Sheriff's Department more than 200 miles from where she was last seen. What at first gave the family hope soon turned into anger and frustration. It was revealed that the purse had actually been in the evidence room of the Crockett County Sheriff's Department since somewhere between April 25th, 1988 and January 1989, shortly after Elizabeth had disappeared. So someone apparently found the purse around Ozona, Texas, and turned it in, where it is put into an evidence room and completely forgotten. There was no record made of who found it and exactly when and where it was found, but some newspaper articles say it was found in a gas station off Interstate 10 in Ozona, which is 230 miles west of Copper's Cove. There were too many fingerprints on the purse to be of any help, and it didn't appear to have been out in the elements for any amount of time. The only reason it was discovered in 1992 was a new deputy had arrived and was going through the evidence room for things to be auctioned at the annual Alliance Club auction. When the deputy saw what was inside the purse, her driver's license, military ID, and bank statements, he ran the information and discovered she was still missing and alerted Copper's Cove Police Department. Elizabeth's sister Barbara even stated in a radio interview that she actually visited the Crockett County Sheriff 2 years after her sister went missing. She gave him a missing person flyer and talked to him about the purse and what might be in it. All the while during this conversation, she was apparently mere feet away from the evidence room where her sister's purse was sitting and had already been turned in. She angrily confronted the new sheriff in 1992 when this came to light, and he seemed to put the blame on the former, now deceased sheriff, and was never given a satisfactory answer. There's another possible theory as to what happened to Elizabeth Campbell that isn't widely mentioned in discussions about her. There is no concrete proof or evidence to support this, but I believe the facts of this individual and his crimes are compelling enough to mention. It is serial killer Robert Ben Rhodes, dubbed the Truck Stop Killer. He was thought to have been active from 1975 to 1990. He was an over-the-road truck driver and was known to be in the vicinity during his routes near where Elizabeth went missing. His first victim's body was even disposed of near Ozona, Texas, where Elizabeth's purse was later discovered. His first murder wasn't discovered until 1990, but he has claimed his crimes went back 15 years. In research by the police cross-referencing Rhodes' trucking logs with records of young women who went missing during the years he was active, it is thought he could have as many as 50 victims. His semi was said to be a traveling torture chamber, and he usually picked up young female hitchhikers as well as truck stop prostitutes. In 1994, he was convicted of 3 of the murders and is currently serving a life sentence at the Menard Correctional Center in Chester, Illinois. There is a movie loosely based on the crimes of Ben Rhodes that was released in 2021. It stars Bruce Willis and is titled Midnight in the Switchgrass. There seems to have been a lot of regrets from Elizabeth's loved ones in the years since her disappearance, which is understandable. Had the family known Elizabeth needed a ride home that night, they would have certainly been there for her. Her brother was driving around Kylene visiting friends at the time, and one of her sisters was actually working at a 7-Eleven in Kylene that night across town. The missed phone call at her parents' house was just a very unfortunate circumstance that happened by accident. I'm sure Elizabeth's then boyfriend Ricky also regrets his actions that night in refusing, on 2 occasions, to give her a ride home. He is quoted at the time in a newspaper article as saying, "I was thinking of myself. I was a stupid ass." Ricky was never really viewed as a suspect in his girlfriend's disappearance. He had witnesses who verified where he was that night, and he also passed a polygraph test. Elizabeth's mother is in fragile health, but will never stop her fight. When she went missing, in her room, she found wrapped birthday and Mother's Day gifts to her from her daughter, which she still refuses to open. Her logic behind that is simple. She wants her daughter to see her expression when she opens up her gifts, so she's saving them until she's reunited with her. The family also has a makeshift memorial to Elizabeth in the living room of their home. Sadly, Elizabeth's father, Tom Campbell, passed away in 2018, still heartbroken over his missing daughter. Tom's quote in the Unsolved Mysteries segment regarding if she has been brainwashed and forced to be on the streets is very poignant and still stays with me to this day. "She's our daughter, not what somebody's tried to make her. She'll always be our little girl." Elizabeth Campbell's family still to this day works day and night to find out answers as to what happened to their loved one. When her sister Carol Hone was interviewed last year for the 35th anniversary of Elizabeth's disappearance, it was mentioned that she still drives around with her sister's missing persons poster taped in the window of her car. Her quote that, "People do bad things and they look like you and me," is sad but true. As far as my thoughts on this case, sadly, I don't think Elizabeth Campbell is still alive. I think she died shortly after her disappearance. The eyewitness sightings are interesting, but it doesn't seem likely that someone who abducted a person to traffic them and strip them of their identity would parade them out in public places so soon after, especially after the missing flyers had been put up. It would make sense they would want to keep them isolated initially anyway. Elizabeth had already accepted a ride that night with someone she didn't really know, so it is entirely possible she accepted another ride, hoping to get from Copper's Cove to her home in Lampasas, but sadly came to harm then. Even though Elizabeth was angry that night, I don't believe she left with the intention of staying gone. She had made a few phone calls to try to solicit a ride and seemed eager to return home. Plus, there was a paycheck that was never picked up, and there has been no bank account or credit card activity since she disappeared. If Elizabeth Campbell was kidnapped to be trafficked, that is a horrible tragedy. If she died the night she went missing by violence, that is also a heartbreaking tragedy. The Campbell family is undeterred in their fight to find their daughter and sister and return her to those that love her. I truly hope they can get all the answers one day and finally know whether Elizabeth's disappearance was a result of trafficking or tragedy. That concludes my podcast on Elizabeth Campbell. If you enjoyed it, please leave me a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. You can find my podcast on Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. It is one word, Lost and Found Podcast. As always, you can find all of my articles, as well as links to my most recent podcasts, at my website at Lost and Found Blogs. You can reach me by email at lostandfoundpodcast@yahoo. And remember that cold cases stay cold because their story stops getting told.